director, and to everyone. I think we've got a lot of people who have never been here before. Okay, that's awesome. This is our space. We're very proud of it. BCP is a nonprofit. We've been a nonprofit for 3 years, but we were around before that as a for-profit. The gallery is a fairly new addition and something we're very excited about. We have a classroom upstairs. We have a really nice darkroom facility. If anybody would like to revisit the darkroom, hang around, and we'll give you a little tour. All behind that wall is our darkroom. We do classes, we do workshops, and we do speaker events. This is our first live speaker event since the lockdown, which this is really big news. So thank you for coming. I just realized they're not going to be able to hear me. And thank you anybody who tuned into the live stream. Just a little bit of business on that. I know y'all have done this before, but if you will put it in side-by-side speaker mode, upper right-hand corner, and then you'll get a bar down the middle, and you can scroll back and forth and choose how much of speaker and how much of screen you want to see. Elizabeth and Katie are here from AIA and ADEX. They are sort of partnering with us on this. This is the Institute of Architects. So we're hoping to do some other programs with them, and we're also going to be doing photo walk with Nikola in a little while, a couple of weeks. March 26th, where he's going to take a group of people around and see if you see what he sees, which I think is going to be very interesting. Good luck with that. We have Nikola's work hanging on this wall, and around the rest of the walls is a project. We've done this 2 years running with Booker T. High school. These are dance students shooting with only their iPhones to give people an idea of what it's like to be in the life of a dancer. So we gave them some prompts. One of them was grounded, the next one was aloft, and the third one was together. So the idea was for them to sort of document what it was like for them. Take a look before you leave. The work is really, really good. So the first thing I want to say about Nikola, we met. Well, it's been a while. Everything's plus 2 years, right? So however long. One of the things we were talking about this before is we're here for him to present photography, but he's not a photographer. And I really love this because he probably has not identified as a photographer for a while. Your LinkedIn page is probably all about your technical work.
My LinkedIn page doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
So it's one level worse than that.
And the reason I say that is because we really push into the idea of the power of photography here. And what that means to us is not the power of a photograph, it is the power of the process of photography itself. Photography changes people, whether you're on the creating end or the viewing end. And I do a lot of one-on-one work, one-on-two. And I've got some clients who are outstanding photographers who are professionals. And I have people who have obsessively shot snapshots of their family for 20 years. They don't have one picture that you would call a photograph on the wall, but they love it. So the reason I bring that up is because this is a really great example of somebody who has a unique perspective, unique vision, executes it, then finds an outlet for it, which is very, very challenging. Maybe all who are published photographers know how hard that is. One of the things I especially love is that he gives away the portraits of his pictures as if to say, good luck with that. Right? It's like, you go stand there and let's see what happens. So his work is surprising in a world where surprise is difficult to do with photography anymore, and especially when it's subjects that everybody sees in front of them. I am really sorry about that. We'll see if we can.
I'm very comfortable right now. This is all good. Here's some photos. Enjoy.
Anyway, I've talked about Nikola Olic. Stick around afterwards for Q&A. Those of you who are online, put your questions in the chat.
And that's how we're going to do it. I will just be talking now, and then we'll do a Q&A separately at the end.
Do you want them to interrupt you with questions? Totally
I think actually that might be, I think both, they don't have to be mutually exclusive. I think that if something comes up as we're talking about photographs, I think it's okay. We have enough time. I don't think the point is to run through so many photographs as if that's, important. But if there's a particular idea or a question, I think it's okay to stop, and I'll make sure that we don't stop too long, and maybe then come back at the end at the Q&A. So I think both can exist, but why not in real time? If there's a question, I think that would be okay. So however you can get my attention, but I think I'll be facing this way quite a bit rather than kind of pointing to this, because I can see the screen here. So how are we doing the lights? Oh, that's what we're gonna do. Okay. Oh, this feels all right. So can everybody hear me? Okay. Okay, I know that. This is such a beautiful place. Peter and Becca and everybody else from the Dallas Center for Photography, thank you so much. And I'm so glad to have so many of you here to see this beautiful space. I don't really have much to add about my photography in addition to what Peter had said. The idea is to show some photographs and have a discussion. Obviously, this is the Dallas Center for Photography. My photography has to do with architecture to some degree, but it goes further than that in the direction that works for me. So a simple description would be that I think that the architecture around us, the cities, the structures, they can be used as brushes and paints to create new visual spaces. So I take what I see and I see if there's something else that can be done. And as Peter mentioned, the coordinates, I do find that to be an interesting part of the relationship that my photography has with viewers. I give the exact coordinates where I was when I took the photo. You can click on the website, go to street maps and take a look and see for yourself, just as this understanding that what you see is real. There is no Photoshop of any meaningful kind. There's some cleaning things up because I'm not very careful with the camera, so I have to kind of clean it up in Photoshop because there's dirt on it. So, but this is real photography. And so I give the coordinates as this understanding that this is mutually understood, that these are the cities around us, and this is what I see. So there will be a lot of photos from Dallas. Some of them you might not even recognize it as Dallas, and then just photographs from around the world. So as I mentioned, if there's a particular question, just stop or say whatever you have to say. But at the end, we'll have the lights on and we'll do a Q&A and we can kind of have a little bit of a dialogue. So this photo was used a lot online for people registering for this. So I just wanted to start off with this for a few reasons. Maybe you're already familiar with the photo from the visuals for this event. And this is Dallas. And this gives a lot of ideas what I find to be interesting in photography. This is a building by IMP down on Ross, Fountain Place, maybe the name now changed, I'm not sure. And the thing that was to me interesting, this is very early in my photography project. My photography is maybe 10 years, not more than that. I think about 10 years. So this is at the very beginning, one of the first photographs. And the idea is the line down the middle is not really the line that has anything to do with like the vertical space. It doesn't go up. This is sideways. And I've spent years walking around this building and shaking my fist at it going, I don't know what to do with this. And I do that often. And I genuinely mean that. My girlfriend Kelly is here. She can attest to this, that I would just really be upset at buildings for me not knowing what to do with them. So I'm not interested in taking a photo of a building and being done. It has no value. And I mean that intellectually and poetically. There is an interest in some sort of a finality of a photo, that this is as much as I can do. And off I go to some other place and other coordinates. The name of this photograph is Chaos, and I think it sort of makes sense. This is the Denver Museum of Art. I forget the real name. What looks like it happened is a whole bunch of buildings fell from the sky. It's just a weird space. This is a normal building. This is a normal structure. This is kind of a normal structure, but this is kind of not. But if you take a particular angle at it, it just looks like you're not really sure what is quite happening. I walked around this museum a lot, and I'm familiar with these sort of physical objects, but it was a particular way to abstract trees and people. I had to climb onto a storage facility, somewhat illegally, and that really clears off, I mean that, it clears off the space so you can see this. I'm very prepared for this, clearly. Sorry about that. That is the idea of this photograph, that I just wanted to see, how can I make this sort of be ambiguous about where is reality and why is this one building really off? But I'm really making you focusing on some sort of a middle ground. This goes to the left, this goes to the right, and kind of it's a composition that sort of ignores gravity and where the reality of this really happens to be. So it was quite a bit of fun to recognize that space. This is New York City, and with every one of these photographs, rather than giving a big story of what happened, I will give what to me was a real reason why this, I think, worked. And some of these photographs, this is maybe 5 years in the making, not like I had any idea, oh, here's the photo, let me just adjust and figure it out. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but what I did know, United Nations is a fascinating building. I love that architect. I'm not an architect, there are architects here, but I have great joy and great interest in follow architecture and particular architects. So Oscar Neymar, the architect here. I like the building because it looks like, from a computer science point of view, which is my normal sphere of work, it looks like a broken file, it looks like a JPEG that's corrupt. And I mean that seriously. And to me, it's a curious thing. What do I do with this? And this, I'm just making a step onto sort of photography and kind of the idea of what I do with photography, that we're not here to talk about architectural photography. We're here to focus on photography and your own stories of what you do in your photography. But for me, the interesting thing here in particular is I am making an assumption about you, the viewer, that you might recognize the building in the middle, which is the Chrysler Building. And you might think maybe it's the Empire State Building or some other building, but maybe it's New York, maybe it's Paris. So I'm making this salvo. I'm saying, I think the viewer would find it interesting if we agree that this is reality. You recognize the building, but you don't know what you're seeing on the right side. And it literally looks like a broken file, which comes back to another thing that I find very empowering for my photography. I avoid humans, only in photography, otherwise I love them. There are no letters, there are no numbers, there is no label that says this is what something is. So it really comes back to the idea that this is sort of painting with the visuals you see. But if you saw a letter, if you saw a number, if you saw a human, if you saw a tree, you start understanding the scale, which is fine. I'm not tricking anybody. I give you the coordinates where I was. But there is an interesting balance, I think, and what people sort of how they're interested in my photography between sort of familiarizing and defamiliarizing. You know that this is reality. I'm giving you the coordinates. You can assume I'm not lying about this or photoshopping it. And then you have the journey of understanding, what do I do next? And if I can take just a step to the side from photography, I don't follow a lot of photographers. I'm not much interested sort of broadly in the world of photography, which is funny to say at the actual Center for Photography. But when I think of visuals, when I think of art, on my website, I have a listing of it's just a heart. And you click on that and it's just a listing of people that I think it's just wonderful to keep in my head. And there are poets, there are painters, there are sculptors, there are photographers. So in a lot of ways, an artist that comes to mind a lot is René Magritte. That he establishes in his career that, hey, the viewer knows that there's going to be some equation to solve. You know that there's going to be a mirror and a guy and an apple and a cloud, and you're going to have to figure out where the reality is, if there is any reality. So in some ways, it's a little bit harder. I'm saying not that it's harder to do what I do compared to René, but I love the limitations that I have, which is this is reality, and I have to work within reality. And so this brings a lot of joy. This photograph was years in the making, and once I clicked and figured out that the two can overlap, I took another 150 photos until I finally got this. And this is sort of it. There's nothing else to do with this. I'm done. And this photograph has been used by the United Nations, the main United Nations in New York City, and then all over the world, they used it in all sorts of campaigns. And that's a huge joy for that to be the case. Yes. Yeah. The previous one?
This one, yes. As you say, that it's like you're talking about basing your photos in reality, but that reality changes because this photo doesn't exist.
Thank you very much. This sounds like an infomercial. How perfect timing. This photograph, and I think that happens in photography, but in particular for mine, there is sort of a documentarian element, which I don't yearn for. I don't really yearn for a particular statement of time passes and we all age and die. That doesn't sound positive, but it happens. But so what happens here? This is 42nd Street. This is Queens. I'm looking west. Yeah, looking west at Manhattan. United Nations. And then behind Chrysler Building on like 4th, 5th Avenue, there's a huge new skyscraper that completely changes this visual. And so that has happened with this photo and quite a few others. Thanks for the astute comment. Good luck with this one. I say this just for a simple reason. I have literally shared the actual photograph like wide. I've given the GPS coordinates. I've held the photo and moved it around in front of people and explained everything. And it still is one of those that you think you have to like, walk in, like walk close and open up your eyesight and get the 3D thing, whatever those things are called. This is just decorative steps behind a casino in Las Vegas. It's like a water fountain and it's just steps with shadows. So this is at about a 45-degree and the sun comes this way and the zigzag is its shadow and there's more stairs here. So all I see, it's reality, but I see just a whole bunch of zigzag lines. And so I have literally the photo of like, here's people walking around, this is the building. It's still a little bit hard to see, but that brings a joy that this is reality that I'm doing nothing with, but it's a little bit hard to make sense out of what's happening. This is the Burnett Plaza in Fort Worth, one of my earliest photographs. I was there with Kelly and I had to climb on a ledge next to a bank and kind of line it up pretty flat. And so the idea is that you kind of see two things. You see some sort of a step thing, but then you recognize behind it, it's a whole bunch of windows. So you really have this canvas full of windows in which all of these elevator shafts are impressed upon. And so it's just really saturated. And I like to make comments here and there about the popularity of photographs. I, of course, mean that very humbly. I'm sort of disinterested in really the popularity of photographs. What does that really mean? There's all sorts of other things we can talk about in the Q&A about what does it mean for photography to live and breathe and to be published, and how do you get published, and what is a good photo or not a good photo in terms of sales and visibility. Those are different questions. But this one is very, 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 very extremely popular photograph. And what I mean by this is a particularly curious photographic truth. And that is, I can think that it's good or bad. You can all think it's good or bad. That's fine. But what's interesting is when I have a pool of photographs and I share it with editors at big publications, when they look through and they pick this so often. And so that's just the interesting thing to consider when things keep on repeating, that certain photographs have strengths that I would not even think that they might have. Rollins.
Is that ever frustrating to you? I mean, I understand your temperament, but does it frustrate you sometimes that so many editors do gravitate toward the same one?
Not at all. Nothing frustrates me in photography at all. And maybe that's sort of like an insane thing that I ignore things that can frustrate, but there's an important, nothing frustrates because that is the joy of the creative space. These are the photographs I like. Here they are on my website or whatever when I pitch to publications. You pick whatever you want. I know what I enjoy, and I will fight for the photos I like to death. And I do.
Let me ask you this. Do they too why? I mean, have you seen a pattern to why they do?
There's often not much space for a dialogue where I'm like, hey, photo editor of the New York Times, give me your story. So no, I'm joking, but sometimes it's just like, oh my God, thanks, sure, whatever you want. I think what you chose is what's the amount of cussing we can do, by the way, legally?
7 words.
7 words. Let me just get them all out of the way. No. I can look at them and just go, that is just shit. I don't know why we're combining it like this, but fine, you do it. So I don't try to guess too much because I don't have time. I want to just think about photography. Yeah. So this is very new photograph. I guess it's also okay to say very hungover, and we were celebrating something very hungover, just tired from drinking. Let's put it that way. And I just wanted to clean my mind and drink a couple of coffees and walk around Austin. And the beautiful thing, I'm very serious. This is purely about photography. I had no plan. I often have plans when I travel for photography. Of course I do. I'm there for only like 10 hours. I travel, take photos, and just go back home. And so I have a plan. Where's the sun? East, west? Where am I going to walk? Is there a scooter? Is there a train? What can I do? This was no plan. This was coffee, headache, and just walking around very freely. This is in Austin. This photograph to me is so dear because in essence, I'm forcing you, let's speak photographically in some broad terms, and I'm no expert of any kind, but things, if you do photography, you would have heard of rule of thirds, or just put things in the middle. So in essence, what I'm asking you to consider here is this main thing where there's light, that is the main part of the photo. The sky is sort of to be ignored, and this dark part is sort of, yeah, sure, fine, there they are. But it's that middle thing. And not only is it well lit and the sky is blue, clean, but you have all of these insane patterns of yellow windows and bricks, whatever that is in terms of facades. And they are completely different as your eye looks up and down. And you just have completely, I've narrowed the building at this weird angle to create this. And when I saw this photograph, it's just an immediate photographic joy. Will this be, this will not be published for a while on my website. I'm very slow in publishing for a reason, to just keep it slow and very laconic and very conservative, photographically speaking. So it's just a joy to see that, in essence, photographically speaking, I'm asking you, ignore this, here's the photo, but I need to balance it with something. This is University of Chicago, I think. Yeah, it's University of Chicago, but maybe whatever the name is, downtown Chicago. The simple comment I want to bring in this really just steps into the world of photography. And this is my truth of what I do with photography that I think is useful for the center of photography to share this. I took 15, 20 versions of the photos. You can see the tree, the branches, or the tree trunk, whatever, the main part of the tree. I don't know the name. I'm from Serbia, not United States. So I was not sure what I want to do with this. This sat in my queue of photographs, which is pretty large, for almost 3 years. And I would look at my own photos often once a day, twice a day, a couple of times a week. And I would just think, what am I doing with this? They suck, they're great, they suck, they're great. I don't know what they are. And I don't have to know, I don't care to know, it's fine. And finally, I picked this one and I thought, wait a second, this just looks, the top is green, the bottom is green. It looks so perfect. It looks like that Windows XP, the green hill. It does have that quality, and I did nothing. I mean, it exists, and I took a photo, meaning it's just there. And I was not trying. I don't try to go for particular beauty of any kind. And so this was just an interesting journey to arrive at the photograph. And then the back, whatever that is, it's just RGB, just like these digital squares that look digital, but yet everything is analog and everything is nature. So this is Miami. These are two separate buildings, but they're part of the same apartment complex. The thing on the right is one building, and then there's like a parking lot, and the thing on the left is the other side of that same complex. And in between is the parking lot. And I did quote the rule of thirds. That's perfectly dividing it 1/3, 2/3. And I think that's a lovely safety that I give you, like, oh, great, at least he's doing the rule of thirds. And then you're like, but what the hell is happening with the rest of it? And that is that I find it to be a pleasant journey, the same way René Magritte, or same way you read a poem and you're not sure what it's about. I invite you to kind of figure it out. And there are wonderful things that are happening here. And once I printed this really large and looked at it large, there's all sorts of interesting things. On the left side, it's weathered, it's lighter. You see the air conditioning things, but you see these little splotches of light. You see these lines that are coming down. And on the right, it just looks perfect. It looks photoshopped, completely clean, absolutely perfect. And there it is. It was just so many trees and problems as I was waiting for stuff to stop moving around. And then it worked. I will just give a side comment on this. On Instagram, somebody tagged somebody on this photo, and then they messaged me saying that this was done by a guy in Argentina. He is the muralist painter that did this. And they sent it to him, and the guy contacts me, and he's just like, oh my God, this is fantastic. What did you do with this? This is great. And there's this interesting dialogue. They did the work. I put a photo. Somebody tagged somebody. They reach out, and I ended up sending a photo down to Argentina for them to have this because the guy wanted to have the photo. And it's a wonderful cyclical joy of things we do and how they represent themselves in the world around us, which I always am fascinated by, be it architecture and any other aspect. This is back at the same building from the beginning, the Fountain Place. The name of the photo is The Pyramid That Is Not There. And I've spent a lot of time figuring out, what do I do with this? What do I do with this reflective thing? So I figured out I don't want any clouds. I waited for a nice day. At the exact time where there would be enough light to do that reflection on the inside, that it looks like it's a pyramid of some kind, but obviously it's just a reflection. And I just found that to be an interesting visual. This is New York City. Doesn't matter where it is, but Manhattan. And so what I'm really forcing you to think about is this kind of looks like a house with a roof, but then you see that it's reflective. And then what's reflected is at a 72.5-degree angle. Where is reality? What's up? What's down? Why? And then it's a little bit of light and a little bit of dark. So it almost looks like east, west, sun is setting on one side, the shadow versus light. And this is just, I will give you a hint. These lines are perpendicular to the ground, that. So it's just a weird shape, and I looked for a thing that can be reflective, and it's just perfect sky. So I'm forcing you to like, oh, this looks like a house, but why is it reflective? Why is the earth at a weird angle? And then you sort of can't really figure out what's going on. This is Clyde Warren Park, that performance pavilion, and it's reflective, and there's shrubbery next to the road, and it's just reflecting off of it. And right to the right of this is the museum tower, and the Nasher is to the right. So it's just that performance place. And I was actually waiting for the pigeon to go away. And I'm not gonna interrupt the pigeoning of the world. So I'm just like, yeah, do your thing. Well, it was a very determined, chill pigeon. And so, yeah, and I don't have any humans, but I have, I guess, a pigeon in my photographs. And this just, the middle of the photograph is the middle, the tip of it is the middle of the photograph. And those things I do in Photoshop. And what I mean by that is I take a photo, I have an idea, oh my God, this can work. And then I keep the same proportions, 3x4, 4x3, whatever. And I just go, let me just move that around a little bit in Photoshop. I just crop what I can do with my hand because I don't use a tripod. Here's my camera that I use. If anybody wonders, this is a $300 camera with no removable lenses. It's not a DSLR. It just has a really nice big zoom and pretty good stabilizing, but my tripod is my hand. And so that way I can walk around forever and not have any equipment. And this is a balancing act that I do for a reason, that this works for me. And people will not like my photos or not want to buy them because like, oh my God, it's shaky or it's not perfect colors, or that's not the point in my photography. And that was a decision or something I had to learn for myself, what works, to sort of abandon worrying about technology of it. So I'll just use that until it fills up with sand and I'll just buy another camera. As if that never happened. Clearly I'm quoting a thing that happened. Good luck figuring this one out. I would almost say nothing and just let you watch, then off I go to the next one. This is the Wynn Casino Hotel in Vegas. It's a huge curvy thing. There are two buildings that are pretty much the same. And what happened here was I wanted to do something with it. And so this tree is in the middle of the courtyard in front of it. The orange thing is a reflection of a building all the way behind my back, far across the highway in Vegas. And it just, you don't know what the big reflected thing is. And the tree looks like it's reflecting itself to be the building. And then you just don't really have enough information what to do with this. So this is such a saturated visual space. And I enjoy those. You have no sky, no earth, no reference what's going on, no windows, just perfect, uniform, overwhelming saturation. And I find that to be an interesting visual thing as you try to process the photograph. Back in New York City, the name of the photograph is Blue Rectangles, I think. Or no, I think I renamed it to Tetris because it looks like you're Tetrising it together. This is three buildings. The blue spaces in between are three buildings and the two spaces in between. It's just the way that they're put together where I stood. And the red behind here, that's behind, nothing to do with those buildings, but everything is red, everything is flattened color-wise. And the blue is nice and clean, no clouds that kind of help you immediately know it's the sky. And that was enough, that was it, I'm done. That was the photograph, I wanted something like this. And owners of these buildings, they saw them on Instagram, reached out to me, so they have this photo in their offices, wherever that is in New York City. Washington, DC, Washington Monument, and the African-American, I forget the full name, my apologies, but the new museum at the mall. I was in DC, literally off from Virginia. I crossed into DC for maybe 2 hours. Pouring rain, crap weather, So usually what I do, if it's raining and I want to take photos, I just go to a museum. DC has a lot of those. Once I was out, it kind of stopped raining, so I just wanted to walk around. I went to the mall and I saw this. And what happens here on a crappy day is just a wonderful sort of lucky outcome. The clouds are kind of fog is covering the top of the monument, but the museum, which is the front part of it, has such a unusual facade that in itself kind of has this ominous heaviness to it. And you can't figure out the material of it, but it almost perfectly matches the angle at the very top with the monument. And then you have this negative space. Here's a small triangle, here's a bigger triangle, but then at the top, per my decision, I wanted to open it up and let it breathe. Just my choice for a little visual bubble that went up and just was released. And so it's anchored around the Washington Monument. And this comes back to the thing that you look at this, and it can be you. Here we are in sort of United States, Dallas. But this is such a known visual that I'm almost saying, I invite everybody to go. We kind of know that this is something in America, that thing in DC, and then you have to figure out what else is happening. So that's that stretching between familiarizing and defamiliarizing, which I think is just an interesting space. The name of this, I just have to tell you, you're not going to see this. Well, who cares? But I won't publish this on my website for a while. I'm just holding on to this, but I guess you're seeing it. The Georgia O'Keeffe Morning is the name. I don't know. That's it, the morning. I love Georgia O'Keeffe's paintings. The colors, the overwhelming kind of radiating, like she would have a sunrise, and it's just variants of colors. And this is just that performance space at Fair Park. I don't know the name of it, but it's the amphitheater thing. Thank you. So this was just a wonderful thing. Like, I want to do something with this. And I would go see Kelly at her bakery and we would talk. And I'm like, hey, the guys at Fair Park are going to let me walk in this place. They like unlocked it for me. And I didn't know what to do once I was in there. It was overwhelming and I didn't get anything. So the next day I came. This is middle of COVID. So nobody cares if you climb on things you shouldn't. So I did climb a lot, quite painfully at times. And I was able to get this. So the thing behind is one continuous part of it. This is just whatever the posts are way on the back of the seating. And the luck of it, well, not the luck, I chose this. On the left side, the shadow started happening. On the right side, it hasn't happened yet. And there's just a little small amount of shadow that is two of these up, just you can barely see it. So shadow is creeping in, but I wanted it to remain on the left. You kind of get some depth. On the right, you don't. And then it looks clean, but it's actually very decaying and old and sort of dirty. Like, look at that wall. But you're sort of forced to not notice that. And in the photo, at first looks clean, but then it's really not very clean at all. It's almost like this abandoned structure, which it's not. But it's very Georgia O'Keeffe, and it was such a joy to arrive at this. And this is done, final. I have 100 photos of this. This is going to be the one that I will use, whatever that means. The name of this is How Buildings Are Made. It just looks like the one on the left is like printing, the one on the right, just rolling it. Next, and you just roll, next, roll. This was in Atlanta. And bad day weather-wise, you can see here, not really very good light, but it worked out because I'm good at figuring out garages and kind of lucking out how to go by the guard that looks at who is coming into the garage. So I just look very confident and I go to the top. And I was in the garage for maybe 2 minutes and I saw this. And this is some famous hotel downtown Atlanta. I forgot the name, maybe Sheraton of some kind. The one on the left, which is in itself a weird, beautiful structure. And then this one right here, maybe that's still the same hotel, but they're separate buildings. But it just looks like one rolls the other. And it was just, to me, fascinating. Like this in itself, these disappearing windows is so photographically unique that I had to do something with it. We're back in DC, Ross Avenue, right across from the DMA on Ross and I don't know, Pearl. No, I don't know what it is. But so this was the new garage, that garage that used to be the parking lot catty corner from the DMA. This is the garage or whatever, the facade on it. And I'm literally in the middle of Ross. This is pandemic, so I could count the lights. And then once it's green or red, I would stop in front of where traffic would be and just take photos for about 20 seconds and then step away because I needed to line up the building with that's right next to it. I don't know what the building is. And so what worked here, and I figured it out that I had to move a little bit further down in the middle of Ross, I can line up the garage with the clouds. And it looks, the name of this is unwrapping, that it looks like the white thing was the part of the sky and I just wrapped it around the building and threw it around. So it's a very complete, saturated, well-balanced. You have white and white and you have brown and blue, and they just kind of cancel each other out. Yeah.
Sorry to ask you another question. How much of that was luck, the way the blue goes into the cloud? I mean,
Yeah. I mean, I guess luck,
with that line where the two-
luck for sure. I mean, I go around, I live in Dallas. And so I mean, I've gone out to take photos in Dallas sort of aimlessly and pointlessly hundreds of times and have instincts of what could maybe happen where and what light works. And so this was luck in a sense that I noticed it on a couple of photos. And I'm like, wait a second, the clouds were not where they are in this photo. They were different. So I literally took a photo, thought this could work. And then I kind of ran away from it to be able to see other clouds coming. And then I waited about 15 minutes for the right number of clouds to be where they need to be. And this worked out. So definitely element of luck, for sure. This is one of my personal favorites. This is underneath the bridge, like 30 Trinity. I just fell into the Trinity in my jumping around. So I was like mud up to my knees, walking around and figuring it out. It's beautiful to be down there with, I always wanted to do something with the overpass as a big delineator visually. So what I'm forcing you here, what I'm sort of making confusing suggestions, the thing on the top is rightly pretty much the same size as this. So you just see top, bottom. Is that the reflection of itself? What is happening? And this is the blue thing you see is the Hyatt Hotel. All of it, the top and the bottom is Hyatt. And the reflection you see at the bottom is the jail down the street on the other side. And I'm literally surrounded with mud and I'm underneath there. And there's just highways above me, super loud, but extremely, to me, peaceful and calm. I love being there. And I've been down under the bridge dozens of times. And it's a place of just creatively, I wanted to do interesting things to me with cutting off spacing with established big things like concrete highways. This to me, this is downtown. This is the same building in the unwrapping photo, I think. It's something here in Dallas. It's a well-known building. I don't know the name. But the three things you see are old billboard all the way down across from the Perot, where the aquarium, the big parking lot for the aquarium. And this is just some sign that has these three pillars. And light was perfect. And you see the brown facade and so much brown, but it's different types of brown. The way that it's here, the way that it's here, the way that it's here, the way that it's here in the building. They're different. And yet we have these three poles that are different themselves. I don't know what the difference is. I mean, this one looks really old. The other ones look cleaner. I don't know what happened. I don't know if that's older or these are older, but that's different types of brown. And so, and it's vertical and it's saturated and the distance is a good quarter mile between these two. So it's just super, super saturated photograph that gave me joy. What is the name of it? Like the name I gave it? What can brown do for you? The old UPS ad. I guess, can I use that legally? I don't know. If there are any lawyers, let me know. This is Thanksgiving Square. Man, did I spend a lot of time there. It's a powerful visual barrier of things. So this is, I mean, just close by, it doesn't matter where I was. But what it does is it flattens. I'm using it because it goes bottom to top. It bleeds all the way to the top. That's one building, that's another building. Those two buildings are completely separated. You can walk between them, but it was just a great way to flatten them and to just confuse you, the viewer. What is the size of this? Does it loop around? Where does it begin? Where does it end? And the lucky thing in this day was, it was a cloudy day. If it was not a cloudy day, you would see a much stronger shadow on that yellow building on the left, but there are no strong shadows because it was sort of a soft light day. So it just, I think this one is called Time-Space Discontinuum is the name. This is very new. That's Phoenix. It's a saturated building. It's the Sheraton Hotel. Yellow, brown windows, balconies. And this is just some dirty fence, a good quarter mile in front of it, just next to some store. I don't know. And it just perfectly lines up with the angles that it's just one superimposed in the other. The saturated sameness of the building behind is sort of quoted in the saturated rhythm of the fence. And I just like the way that they smash together in the visuals. I'm sorry? Yeah, that's exactly what I do. Yeah. Yeah. So I saw the building and I thought, well, there it is. It's saturated, it's sameness, but that in itself doesn't interest me. So there it is. But I was looking for something to combine with it. A lot of my photos combine multiple things. And then I just saw this not well lit fence. Obviously, there's no light on it. And I wished at first that there would light, if there could be some light behind me, that I can have more light on this. But this actually gives you more contrast. And the fact that it remains blurry, because this camera sure as hell can flatten that out. I mean, you would have to have a bazooka, like such a weird f-stop possibility for aperture on your camera. That's nowhere possible. But it worked because it's blurry. And sort of my eye kind of goes to that main column right here, that it's all nice and yellowish. And these kind of have some variance because of the open things. But that is just lovely saturation. And I was not sure. I stared at this photograph for weeks. I'm going to share a photography thing. We're at the Dallas Center for Photography. There are two places where I look at my photographs a lot. Kelly knows this. We live together. One of them is I have all of the unseen photos on my phone. Anytime I drive anywhere, I put it on 20-second slideshow. I know safety, but it's just playing in my car. And I just look at my own photos and always think they're random, these photos that have not been published. And it just forces me to rethink about them. That's one. Two, when I shower, I have the phone always on and it's playing a slideshow. Every 20 seconds, I see another random photo, my own photo. And I just look at it and I'm showering. Talk about coming to a photography talk and hearing this, but it's the truth. And it has to do deeply with a relationship with photography. I'm completely serious. And this is, I don't have infinite amounts of time. I'm not a photographer. I mean, I am, but I have other interests and things in life. So I find ways for this to be very productive and very serious for me, as I find it to be a very important thing. So I stared at this photo a lot going, and it just went from to yes. Those are the grunting levels of success. Good luck with this one. This one, well, it's about to be published next week, but let's just wait for that without any details. Austin, I would almost ask you, what do you think is happening? But I don't want to do that now. I just want to keep on going. This is, obviously, there's no Photoshop happening. I'm at the top of the museum in Austin, and they have some letters that say equality on the top of the museum. So pay the ticket, go to the very top. Don't look at all the art because I don't have time. I need to go make my own art, so to speak. I mean, so this is just the back of that reflective letter. This is the actual reality across the street on the main Congress Street. And this is a building reflected from catty corner behind me. And this is just all the way up. It's just right in front of me. This is some reflective letter that's 5, 6 feet in front of me. And so what I'm not allowing you to know is I'm not showing you the top of this building. If I showed that letter come to an end or the building come to an end, you would have a better understanding of what's up, but I don't. And if you could see it closer, you would see that all of this is all melted and weird because the surface, that letter is not perfect. And there are like little bolts and circles on this. So if you just focus on this, it doesn't look real. It looks all bent and very science fiction-y, almost like a fairy tale. But the thing on the right has a similar song, not similar, but it has a song and dance with a blue color because I like the end of the facade, how it opens up and you have blue that enters and then you have variants of blue and white. I just found it to be quite interesting. Yeah. I'm sorry? Oh, thank you. Liberty and justice for all. Thanks. That's what the museum says. This is Austin, a new building. I don't know the name of it. I think something with the wind, sail, wind, something. That was the same when I mentioned that photo that I was walking around after a long night. And this one introduces to you, or something that's very clear to me, I am forcing you to consider the thing to focus on is that I'm balancing that line and this line, that is the middle. This is perfectly centered. And then this is something to kind of throw away. Not throw away, but that is, I'm forcing it to go. The middle is the photograph. And the building really doesn't have that middle. It has it because I'm standing in front of it and I took 100 photos. And I found this to be a lovely balancing point of what I thought would look particularly strong. This is right here in Dallas, off of McKinney. It's just a building that, in essence, just kind of swoops out on one side of the facade. So this is, obviously, I'm not doing anything to it, but this is normal to the ground, that is normal to the ground. That side of the building is just kind of tilted forward. So I am forcing you to consider that middle line where the two sides of the building come together. Normally it's like this, but if I force that to be the center, you have to reevaluate reality. And what works, one side of the photo is really bland, the right side, flat, bland, nothing is happening there. Thank God, no humans. I don't take photos of humans. And on the left is a lot of activity. And it's just like, this looks like some sort of a castle. That looks like some sort of a tower. I don't know. One of them is like the Ritz-Carlton is right behind. So it's just this interesting combination of visuals. I'm sorry? Okay, well then it's real. I have proof. It exists. Great. I would love that. This is a very recent photograph. That is Phoenix. One hand, I have a cappuccino. The other hand, I have my camera. And this is in front of the Starbucks. And this is just looking up. And oh my God, how many things are happening here. This is just some fancy hotel, 4 letters, has the letter O in it. I don't know what it, not the Omni, but some fancy hotel in, am I saying the right city? I am, Phoenix, yeah, it's Phoenix. And so the thing above me, the black things are just some awning, and that's just the building above it. But the main pipe in the awning is exactly where the light and the shadow dance. And that's also where the type of the facade changes from these circles to whatever this is. Just all sorts of things are happening. And I'm literally drinking coffee, standing outside, looking around, and I just see it in front of me and take a sip, take a photo, take a sip, take a photo. And 50 photos later, it kind of worked out. And I zoomed in. I'm sorry? Thought somebody sent them. I zoomed in a lot to just see how good this is. That was spot on. Just almost to like 3 pixels. Like it, I mean, I took 100 or whatever, 50. So one of them is going to work. So yeah, so like sort of photographically speaking, is this a good photograph? I mean, I don't know or care. Is it interesting for me to have resolved the equation, the visual equation for what's happening in my world? Yes, and that joy is what pushes me in my photography to share this and propose these questions, poetically speaking, visually speaking, that it's just interesting to observe the world this way. Is it a good photo or not? I don't know. Would you put this on the cover of a magazine? I don't know, but there it is. So I'm in talks with them to put it on the cover of a magazine, but we'll see. Something design, Pacific Design Center in LA, Northwest LA is the main building that you see reflect TED. And this is some building next to it that I'm taking the physical photo of, but just it looks like it's taking off and disappearing. And it's all purplish and reddish and strange. And just the colors are out of this world. And every single one of these is like a separate episode. Like, here we go, here we go, here we go, and off it goes. And that was enough. I don't need much more than that. If you have questions, we can also come back to them later on. I'm sorry?
What was the name of the previous photo?
The name of this photo? I just realized that this is not too bad of a photo recently, so I have not figured out the name yet because nobody's going to see this for years.
I propose Red Sail.
Red Sail sounds good. Yeah. Yeah, I'll figure it out when I get there. Yeah, I haven't talked to myself on that one yet. This is Houston. The building behind, the building behind. I've been to Houston a billion times for basketball, for photography, for all sorts of other hobbies and interests. And that building, I took a lot of photos, the one behind. I don't know the name of it, but it's one of them. big building downtown Houston. So it just has this weird layering. Weird is not a good word. There are architects here, so I'm loose with my language. But that's the thing at the top. It just kind of has this layered, like one has 3 windows, 5, 7, whatever. And the one in front of it, whatever that thing is, that's some hotel, that in itself has sort of layering. So if you stand in the middle of that street, ignore the hotel staff telling you to leave their property, you can take that photo. And this is a very tight photograph because 1 millimeter off to the side, it doesn't have the balance. And I needed to have all of those 3 little windows at the very top that are kind of cascading. And if you don't have enough of them, if it's only 2 of them, the photo would be a little bit freer to breathe, but it's not enough for your eye to recognize the similarity between that kind of stacking and the one up there on top, in my view. Chicago, the name of this is Constructed Sky. To my surprise, like some photos that I told you are popular, the New York one and the Fort Worth one, some of them I'm not surprised. I can just go, sure, this is good, fine. Okay, I will allow for you to agree that it's a good photo. Great. False modesty. I know Earl is here. This one was I was not expecting it to be. This one, in terms of people reaching out to buy this photograph, I've sent this to United States, to Europe, to Asia, doesn't really matter, but just interest that is so far away from the United States for this photograph. Right now in contact with people about this very photograph. Much more popular than I thought it would be. This is some university in Chicago. Thank you, that's what it is. 2 separate structures, but I think the same, like they're both the university, but they're separated. And it just, you see the building, you're like, oh, nice building. And then you see, oh, blue. And you're kind of disconnected for a second, and then you, of course, figure it out. Getty Museum in LA. Anytime I'm in LA, I always go, always. I love that space. And so this is just the support beam somewhere, I think underneath the main cafe when you walk around on the lawn, and I just turned back. And so the few things that work photographically, you are having 2 surfaces that are very similar, but one says something, the other one doesn't. One is the cross, and the one behind is like, hey, I'm here, but it's chill, nothing, I don't have much to say, but I'm the same thing. And then you notice the really sharp shadows, lines coming down. And you can't quite map those lines to any of the cross that you see. You don't know what causes those. And that to me is enough. I don't have any more questions to pose about this visual space. There it was. And I was in LA for work, and I insisted on going to the Getty, and I went there. We were there for like 20 minutes. And I took 2 photos, and this is one of them. And that was just luck. The name of this photo is New York, New York. Look at my face. How happy am I with that name? God, yeah. And this one was sitting in trash folder of visiting New York. And not trash, but just like, pfft. And then I just saw it differently after a while. So this is the new one. What's the name? One World Tower, where the 2 towers used to be, so the tallest building in the Western Hemisphere. And so just as you walk around, these little things, the New York in the front of you, that's this big, and that's there for kids or grownups not to sit on there too close to the window or play there. So they have little silhouette of New York City, and then you actually have New York City. In addition to that, what I like here in this particular one is you actually have a clean gray line. So none of the buildings below on the fake New York are superimposing themselves on the real New York. So the gray line is important, photographically speaking, in my view. It would be a much weaker photo if that line was not, if any of the little buildings were overlapping the big ones, it would change the balance. And then you have a sunny day, but then you have a cloud splotch all over. That's like 38th, 39th Street. That's Empire State and North. And that just goes, wait, what is this? Oh, New York. Oh, and then there's focus on that kind of dark area. So there's like a 1, 2, 3 punch to this visual. And the name, I mean, it cannot not be named New York, New York. You just can't. I have been chasing this, God. This was pretty recent, but I wanted to go do something with this building. This building has been that's in Houston. And so I did not know what to do with this. I tried so many different things with this building. And this was a lucky thing an hour before I had to drive back up north in the park right in front of it between trees. That weird, you don't know the shape of this building. Maybe you don't know, maybe you do, but just the way that it flattened a really steep kind of steeple at the top with the normal facade, and you have the white pyramids on top, and it just flattens, and I forced the diagonal. So I, in essence, made a flat line that doesn't really exist there, and I made it also go diagonally visually to just confuse you where is what's where. Man, do I like this photo? This has been cooking for years. I think 3-4 years that I just had it not published yet. I'm on top of the now closed vessel. So it couldn't have been that long. Vessel hasn't been around that long. The structure in New York City, in Hudson Yards on the west side of Manhattan, called the Vessel, that is now closed for various sad reasons. And so I was there, rainy day, and I just noticed that the hand railing with the rain on it, and then the rain on that plastic, and then you have trains behind it, and the trains are roughly the same size as my handrail, and they're all gray, they're all long, they're all tubes. One is really big down on the ground, the one is small, and there's rain that kind of equalizes everything. Visually, you first kind of notice the rain, the raindrops. And so it's just kind of this monochrome, or whatever the word is, like grayish visual that I didn't do anything in Photoshop. It is just that. And so just the lines work, the balance works. I like the photo a lot. We're back at the Thanksgiving Square. The Republic Tower is behind it. I think that's the name of it, right across. There's an interesting juxtaposition here that is unintended, but that was the time of the day. And also probably because of my camera dealing with light and color, it does this. So I didn't touch the photo. But what I wanted to do for years, how do I make the Philip John, the Thanksgiving Square thing, the sculpture, how do I make it exactly? I wanted it to be right next to the building, so it looks like it twirls right around it, that it goes behind, that it hugs it, which it doesn't, it's in front. But you don't know that, or maybe you do, but you're kind of wondering, but definitely somebody else doesn't know. But the light, the monument, the sculpture is in a shadow from that big building right next to it, but there is so much light hitting the bronze facade of the Republic Tower that it's bright, it's white, and it's not, it's black, it's silver. So it's so much light, but this is in a shadow with a little bit of light reflecting from other buildings. Completely flips it, almost like a negative, but yet the sky is blue. I'm not doing anything with this photo. This is absolutely untouched. I might have moved it pixel by pixel to just make sure that the line is where it needed to be. So I was chasing something else, but then it just kind of flips on me. And I really think that has a lot to do with a kind of a bad camera, that it just kind of doesn't know what to do. It's true. That's the bridge, the Calatrava Bridge, whatever the official name, across Trinity. And I'm sorry, Margaret Hill, thank you. And that is the moon, one and only moon we got. And so to me, with this little camera, I just used my elbows. It was good. You can really zoom in. It's pretty clean. And this is just called moon tennis. You don't know the size of the bridge. It looks like a wheel. It looks like a nice two-handed backhand. You don't know. I don't know. It's fine. But then you start looking at the light on this, the light, how that is nicely shaded, how we have combinations here, this nice gradient. It just works lovely. But there's a particular reason why I wanted to show you this photograph, and it has to do with just the experiences of sharing photographs with the world around us. And again, time back, who cares about architecture in particular? I love architecture, but meaning this is about photography. So I wanted to just share an anecdote about this. A lady saw this. This was in the Dallas Morning News in the Arts and Life section, together with other photos from Dallas about 2 years ago, like the cover of it, and then a lot of other photos. There was a lot of connection, a lot of contacting, a lot of reaching out to me. Lady reached out saying, I love this photo. I would like to buy the photo. Let's talk. Sure. Fine. She gets the photo. I go and I deliver it to her. She lives just outside of Dallas. And we talked, and so she tells me why this is important to her. This is Santiago Calatrava, the famous architect that did this, that designed it, and he was in Dallas quite a bit. Well, the lady happened to have worked for the city of Dallas for 30 years, in charge of somehow all of this coming together, and she was in charge of walking around with Santiago Calatrava and driving him around and talking about this bridge. So she knows him well. And so she's telling me this story of like, yes, I know about the bridge. And then she says, and you know what? She points to the top of the bridge. It's made out of rings that are kind of welded together. You can't see it here, but it's just separate sections. She says at the very top section, before they put it up there, all of us city employees signed it together with Calatrava. So my signature is inside that bridge. I have chills now. And I'm like, Santiago Calatrava, I know his stuff. It's great. I've seen his buildings around the world. And you go know the guy and you drove with him and you're like, it's a photo of your signature in there. She's like, yes. And it's like this big part of her home, and it changed the visuals over the fireplace. She made her home work around this photo. Photography joy. Just doesn't matter what you take photos of.
You're talking about zooming in. How much of the zoom is that?
This is not too bad. I mean, it was this camera, I think. It would be good that I could give you that answer, but it was like halfway zoom that my camera can do. It's not too very technical. Thanks for coming to my talk. So I know from zooming in Photoshop and looking at the clarity of this, because I had to print them bigger for some people, and it's so clean. The moon looks great. So it was not too much because my hands can't, I mean, it kind of starts shaking when it's a big zoom. So I don't know, but it was nothing crazy, but I was literally under the bridge, like it just nicely lined up. So I was pretty close to it. So not a crazy zoom, but I don't know. Denver, saturation and squeezing and the surprise in between. That is why I like here. Here's something we can figure out that you sort of, what city did I say? Did I say city? Denver. I think it's Denver. Might be Seattle, but I think it's Denver. No, it's Denver. I remember. I had to wait a long time for enough light to be on that building behind. Yeah, it's Denver. Just that in between building is kind of like just like hello, just peeking, and that is enough. It's super saturated, good flat colors. I like it a lot. This photo recently became quite popular in terms of visibility and people reaching out, because it was, I think, the leading photograph in a New York Times article from maybe a month ago, 2 months ago, where the Times used 17 of my photographs from around the world, and they show you a photograph and you have 4 options and you have to pick the city where it's from. You have to guess. And this is the first one. And good luck with that quiz. That was suffering. But it was fun, and everybody took it in good fun, and it was really well accepted in the architecture community. And I heard from a lot of architects and how they were trying to figure out from just knowing architecture, like, oh, well, that building, that couldn't be in Spain because they didn't do that back then. I don't know what I'm saying, but just like adding academia to it, which is wonderful. And then I would have to listen to them figure out what it is. It was just great. And this is, Rollins, what you mentioned about like me talking to editors. This is the second time I did the quiz with the New York Times, and I'm so happy to communicate with them. And they put this on the homepage of the website for like the whole day, super visible, just wonderful. But the photos they picked, God, how can you possibly guess some of the things? It's impossible. So it's just really frustrating. People are like, I only got 2 out of 17 and I'm an architect, like you need to be able to guess it. So I asked them, like, can we just make it slightly easier? Like, nope, this is it. Okay, New York Times, whatever you say. This is Miami. It's some hotel, big chain. I forget what it is. In essence, it has 2 parts that are kind of two identical parts. This is the sky. That's the inside facade. That's one side of the hotel. That circle connects it to an identical another part of that hotel. And so I extrapolated the other side, and I'm calling this, no big surprise, the mug. It looks like a mug. That's it. And sort of the shadow explains what's up. The shadow makes it clear. This is something. There's something there, but it's very similar, kind of blue-green, and this is just blue, and it just worked really well. So yeah, recently this photograph has been more visible. Oh man, this one. I've screamed for years since they built. This is in front of the opera, the awning in front of the opera, Dallas Opera, from Forrest, or what is the name of the architecture firm that did it? Foster? What did I say? Forrest? Yeah, Foster and whatever. So I just didn't know what to do with it. The beautiful red top, the reflections. Years I've tried to do something, and this was I noticed the shadows on the supporting beam, but all of the shadows here, and this perfectly. This is the one plaza right behind, whatever it's called, with all the. I know WRR used to have a studio up on top of that, so it just worked out that it's just crisscrossed with a lot of shadows. Phantom of the Opera is the name of it, because it haunted me for years. Also, I will just mention Foster. The guy was here when the opera opened, and there was a showing of all the mock-ups of the Dallas Opera at the Nasher, and I was there with my friend. One thing led to another. There was confusion. We ended up going with their families and getting a private tour of the whole thing. And I was just there going, sure, I'm one of the members. And I just got to hear wonderful stories. And this is when it's your stuff. You can touch things, you can move things, you can do things. It was fun. That photo is right up there as well. So can you still hear me okay? Is my microphone moving? Is it good? All right. It's just kind of moving around, and I'm slowly bending over for it to work, but it's fine. This is in Milan, and what is happening here? The thing that's parallel to the ground are the windows, and the building itself is just kind of swooping up. And it has soccer players, because this is the Milan Football Club, soccer club headquarters, and so it has these silhouettes, these cutouts that are just soccer players kicking a ball. You don't see the ball on this one; it's on the next one. So I just abstracted this, flattened it on the surface at the top, which is not the normal surface. And then it's just this one black line. Everything else is red and gray and blue, and just one black line that forces your eye to look at the guy, and you go, well, who is the guy, and why is it, and where's the building going? All sorts of questions that you sort of trust that it's real, but you don't know without knowing what the building looks like. And this one took a good year to narrow down from 10 different versions of the photograph what might work well. Interesting reaction, great. So this is a commentary in this photograph. I think anybody in the world of any creative visuals and art, what is art, what is not art, and what does it mean to make art? So you have a Coke can on the ground, and you take a photo. Can you sell that at some art fair for $1 million, or put a banana on the wall and say that it's $200,000? If you follow art news, that happened. And somebody just took the banana and they're like, oh my God, $200,000. So this is just supporting beams for the roof over a tennis center in New York City, the US Open Arthur Ashe Stadium. So they added a roof recently, and this is just supporting beams to hold that roof in place. And so I was on the third level, and I'm just looking around, and I see this saturated pipes that just looks like an art piece. And it's just pipes that are holding the top of the roof, and the four corners of the Arthur Ashe Stadium have these really saturated, maybe more than 4, maybe 8, I'm not sure. And so I just kind of waited for the right light. And if you zoom in, that one has been painted, and there's scratches, and you see some bolts here, and you see kind of little imperfections, but it's just pipes. And I have friends here that enjoyed that photograph in their home. The name of the photograph? Creatively, it's called Pipes. Sometimes, hey, but I'll tell you the name of this one. The name of this one, before we go further, and boy, did I have joy in this one. Should I stay or should I go? Because look at it. How balanced that statement is. Should I stay? Things are still. Or should I go? Just perfect, writes itself. This is downtown Dallas. The thing on the left is reality. The thing on the right is an ad for Smirnov or something on the Sheraton Hotel. And there's a new park outside Pacific Plaza. I forget the name of it. My apologies. So I'm standing there, and it's the Sheraton or the one right next to it, but I'm downtown Dallas. And the left is the regular sky. Should I stay or should I go? And just poetic balance on both sides, as balanced as the very statement. And should I stay or should I go is the famous song from The Clash, which I enjoy. So this photograph is one of my personal important photographic joys of how and what this represents for me, in terms of like, is it a strong photo? Is it not? And a few editors chose this photograph, which was a joy when I'm not pushing it. And I am pushing this one a lot. Just, I want it to be seen. And so, doesn't work out too much. But Washington Post last July had a story about my photography. And I gave them a few, and the editor was like, hey, tell you what, instead of you editing, let me edit. Let me just curate the photos. So I gave him all of my photos, and this is one of them. So the name of this is The Speed of Light. The joy in this is as follows, as I tell you my photographic joy. This is the Prada Museum in Milan. I was there for just like 36 hours on my way home, back where I'm from, Serbia. 2 light poles that I just needed to squeeze perfectly. The one in front of us has the 2 sides. The one in the back is only one-sided, whatever, like 2 lights or 1 light. So there's one in the back. And there's just perfectly working out that I could squeeze both of them in, that I see the both poles. And then you recognize that these PVC see-through things, they are, by their structure, they're bending the light of visually, me seeing that, they're bending it, and that's why everything is physically bent in them. So the light is actually bending the very light, the speed of light. And as the light hits plastic, it bends, and you see the ones in the front, you see the ones in the back, and everything is blue and saturated. This photograph, I immediately, rarely, and there's no importance to what I'm saying to me. You take a photo and you go, oh, this is great. There's maybe some idea this will be good, but later on, after showers and driving, I'm like, and I downgrade the photo. So this one, I immediately fell in love with the idea of what this represents and how tight it is to represent both of them to where you can see right there. And that was just the immediate photography joy. Green Living is the name of this one. Hong Kong, photography commentary on this, a side thing. We were in Hong Kong for about 8 days, and I expected, lightly, as I mentioned, I'm never frustrated with things working out or not working out, because I would never do anything if I go, oh, I went to DC, but it was raining, I don't have a photo. It doesn't matter. I can go and take photos or succeed or not, it doesn't matter. In Hong Kong, I expected to have a big body of work. It's such a saturated city with hills and architecture, but it was so saturated, I couldn't breathe. I can't step away from a building. It was just this. And it was kind of tricky weather for the time that we were there. So it was just not a lot. It was a lot of moving around and learning about Hong Kong and enjoying. But on the back of Hong Kong, where the wealthier people go, there's more space and there's a lagoon and it's really pleasant. And so I just saw this, that you have 2 big piles of greenery and then a building that's very thin and very deep. And that was enough. You don't know the depth, you don't know the size, you don't know the height. And this was used, I don't know when it was recently published, maybe on an architecture, I think Design website, British website that writes about architecture. I think they used this one. And somebody contacted me saying, did you notice that the windows were off in the building? Something about it, like, what's the size of your floor? I've never looked at it in detail. The guy went and found the building and then found the blueprints of the apartments and sent me a whole report of like, did you notice this? You didn't. Well, now you do. And here's all the info about the floors. Thank you. Which is a wonderful thing, the excitement that people have to like figure these things out. Yeah, so Green Living in Hong Kong. And I guess, do I have photos of humans? There must be humans in there. People here might recognize this photo. A dear friend has this. So this is Houston. It's a very saturated visual space, and I cut off explaining what exactly is happening there, and at the top and at the bottom. This is completely untouched other than my choice. And it's just beautifully, strangely, absolutely saturated. I don't know if you can open those windows. I doubt that you can. I don't know if you could have any variance in this because it's darkened windows. Maybe you can't. So this is just an indentation where you have a facade and then kind of a 45-degree dig into the facade. But if you stand at that 45-degree, that looks flat. So that little thing is sort of, not quite, but kind of flat to me. And it's just the indentation in the facade. And so I am also quoting, to make you feel safe, but to kind of trick you, the rule of thirds. So I'm just saying, bam, 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 rule of thirds, but then you start going, whoa, what's happening? So pretty hypnotic space indeed. I think that's the name of it. This looks to me at first like some sort of a religious space, like some sort of a, yeah, sanctuary is great. Yeah. And this is underneath I-30. Yeah. This is like the shrubbery, like the Trinity is in front of me. I'm on that embankment that there are two of them, like one before Trinity, and then on the other side, there's another one that kind of holds some part of the overlap. I'm not sure, but there is a big embankment behind me, which is an incredibly creative space. You can change the elevation and change what you do with photography. So I've spent quite a bit of time there just looking at what can I see from here? And you just walk up 2 feet and it changes what you see. You walk up another 2 feet at a nice embankment, and you can go laterally and you sure as hell are not going to see anybody else there. So nobody's going to tell you that, get out of my way. And that is a big part of my photography. I'm tying it back to the realities of photography that we all have for ourselves. One of the most productive things in my photography that I found is to be left alone. Just left alone, as in there's not too many things in front of me and I can just be in a space like Fair Park, that kind of a thing. Alone as in there's nobody around and I'm just free, rather than, oh, there's traffic that can kill me, or there's police that doesn't like me taking photos of IMP's building, Ross Avenue. They certainly don't like that, because I've talked to them many times, which is fine. I understand definitely my legal obligations, and so I'm just careful in how I have that dialogue. And so this is a very comfortable photography space for me, because there's nobody around. And I literally would just sit there and stare and think what else to be done, and think, and come back 5 days later and think again. And that's where the photographs come out of, that sort of a space of just contemplative space for what can I do with this photographic space. That looks kind of surreal and made up, but this is the Denver Museum of Art, whatever the right name of the building is. I have the right side is the actual building. I think the very shop, the museum store is literally right underneath it. This is across the street. It looks just like that. I have no idea what it does, because it's kind of see-through. I mean, look at the top. You just see the sky over there. It looks very decorative. I'm not sure. But itself, it looks surreal. It looks like what people 1,000 years ago thought we would look like in 5,000 years. It's just strange. But then you take the strange and then you reflect it. So you have these kind of bizarre shapes that kind of have to quote themselves. And you have this really intricate facade that's a whole bunch of little squares on the left side that become really weird. And like, look at that. It looks almost like snake skin, alligator skin. There's just so much going on that was enough. And then you have the blue sky in the middle that kind of balances everything out. Oh man, what is the name of this one? This one is Nature Imitating Architecture, Imitating Nature. That's the name of the photo. Here's why. This is some famous building in Milan that is known for a lot of greenery on the balconies and terraces, which is just a lot of, I guess, being exposed in a high rise. So we have a building that is like, hey, I'm all nature. But then notice the shape of the trees. It is exactly the shape of the damn building. That was the photograph when I figured that out. That it just has the swooping shape. That is exactly. So we have nature imitating a building, and building is in turn imitating nature, perfectly balanced, almost the same height, just perfect. Perfect meaning my intellectual joy. Is it perfect or not? Doesn't matter at all. This is the same university in Chicago, but just whatever that building behind is, I think I call this peaking architecture. It just literally looks like there's a building and like, hey guys, There's just something, just like, no, I'm also here, big building, but I'm here, it's cool. And it's a strong thing, the blue and the red. And then also the thickness of that building's, you can see sort of the depth of that building in that white streak at the top, that it just adds something else to it.
We're just past 8:30, so if there's going to be a bunch of questions, you might want to pace it. If not, keep it.
Well, I guess I don't know if there will be questions. So
Take a break.
yeah, I mean, definitely I would like to talk some and turn on the lights. So keep on going a little bit more, but definitely I'll go maybe another 10 minutes and then we have 20 minutes for talking. Is that okay? Okay. Okay. Let's holler at photography. Awesome. Perot Museum. And I just forced, I think that this is 90 degrees to the ground. So that is sort of an embankment that has all sorts of greenery from all over Texas on top of Perot. So I flattened it to where you just have this really saturated, heavy facade that in itself is quite overwhelming. Like the lines are just coming at you at the top and at the bottom. And you just have this little green sliver, again, kind of like Earth going, I'm here, I'm just existing. And it's just very nicely balanced. And it's barely perceptible in some ways that you have that greenery.
Take a picture that way, or do you just view it later?
I definitely take pictures. Most of what you see, I do physically take them that way. And then just later on, if I have to adjust the pixels, but usually I start composing it within my viewfinder of like, oh, that's the photo. Sometimes for testing purposes and from knowing that I will forget something or be going like, oh, I could have done something else. I've learned over the years that whatever I'm deeply interested in, if I know that there's something interesting, I will remember to take a wide shot, horizontal, vertical, just to have it. And then I can go home and keep a 3x4 crop and play around and go, oh my God, and it's going to look sort of crappy if the quality, but it doesn't matter. I will literally fly back and do it again whenever I can find a $39 ticket on Spirit. I go back and give it a try. I mean, I mean that. I do that. I've flown back to Chicago to take a photo. I couldn't figure out my own photo that I took once. And I looked at it, my own photo, looked at it in Google Maps, flew around. I have no idea. And I went back there, walked around. I still don't know what I did. And I have my own coordinates and I am me and I don't know what I did. That's deeply philosophical. I am me and you are you. This is called architectural warp, architectural wrap, because it just looks like you're wrapping something together. And this is called the Mercedes building. Maybe I'm not pronouncing it correctly. I've stared at this building for years, mostly from this is on the west side of Manhattan. I've stared at it from New Jersey side. I would take a ferry, $15, go across and kind of scan all of the west side of Manhattan. And I see this building, but I couldn't really, that was the limit of my zoom. It started really sucking. It was almost pointless. And, but I walked up to it to kind of get familiar with it. And I recognized that the inside of the building just has a swooping thing, just the balconies, windows, and then it just turns. So I stood there and I took 50 photos roughly, deciding, almost having a dialogue in my head with you, the viewer, what is the right amount of that corner that I want you to see? Because I could have moved it around and split it in the middle. Here's one side of the building, and then it kind of curves, fine. I could have given you 1/16 of the space. Is that enough? So that was just playing what is the right amount. And it kind of quotes something that maybe subconsciously you would recognize as a viewer away from, do you do photography or not? That from a horizontal perspective, the triangle ends about halfway. And from a vertical perspective, it's about at the rule of thirds. It's about cutting it right there. Not quite, I couldn't get it. So it kind of quotes like, okay, I'm safe. You put it somewhere, but I don't know what's happening. And it's just a really sweeping thing that is really disorienting and very saturated, which I quite enjoy doing. Oh, yeah. It's kind of funny for me to ooh and ah out my own photographs, but I don't know what's coming. I can't remember so many photographs. So I just like him. I mean, I look at him all the time. And so this is Chicago, what was the museum? Do you remember? It was a big museum in downtown Chicago. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so it's, my apologies, but it's a museum in Chicago. I think we were together at that visit. And so I was just walking around, and I so often, I guess I'm saying nothing smart by saying this, but who was it? Maybe Peter, you would know. Was it Ansel Adams or somebody else that said that, you know, with every photograph you take, I'm paraphrasing, you bring every book you read, every song you heard, everybody you loved, everybody you knew, all of your interests in essence. And that certainly holds true for me, that I just need to go and look at museums and walk around and look at stuff and think about things and forget about photography, forget about the world. And walking around and I see this thing in front of me, that it's just the great things you see are those kind of covers, what covers, like a yeah, blinds of some kind that are see-through. So the gray things are blinds. There's a window behind it, and this is like a thing that keeps the window in place, just like a part of the facade. That's the window. These are the see-through blinds. And I'm forcing you to consider, I have this beam in my museum and I have these blinds, but that beam is exactly the same as the building behind it. And there's the bright light around the beam, which is just the non-blinds that shoots all the way up to the sky. It was right there. It just was in front of me. I clicked it once, forgot about it. I didn't think it's going to be super strong, but I really like it. And this is, to me personally, it's a strong photo that I have shared this, and this has been published, but it's not a very popular photo with editors. They don't notice it. But if I have a chance to talk to them and explain it, it elevates in value, which is what I just now said, is all sorts of interesting things to think about if you think about your own photography and its space in the world, that it's not good photo, bad photo. It's everything around it we construct as narratives and our own thoughts and our ways of writing about photography and thinking about it. And whom do we pitch and why and how? Will they listen to us? Will you have a chance to have a talk? And if you do, it can elevate somebody's understanding of your photography, and do whatever it needs to do. So that is just connected to so many things that go beyond the cameras we have. And is this a good photo or bad? I don't have any idea what it means to be a good or bad photo. It's our personal relationships with them. This one is called Flow. And this is Hong Kong, one of the 3 photos that I think from Hong Kong. The thing that I'm connecting here is Hong Kong is so saturated, so full of people. We have a high rise or a couple of them, just buildings. And it just looks like it just flows out in these pipes and people can go out of those buildings and move around the city. To me, I'm equating the building and just the movement of mass and people to come out of it. So the building and then the pipes on that rooftop that lead out from the buildings. I'm sorry? Oh, yeah, on the left side. Yeah. This one is the Dallas, where Dallas Morning News used to be the, yeah, so you guys know. But now it's changed. They added something on top, like some sort of a terrace with a cover. But what's happening here, if you don't know the building, is there's a facade. So I'm the building now. Here's the building. And I'm going to literally reenact the building for you. I have 2 facades on the side, but this is like Silicon Valley. They go like this, they go like this. So the building just goes upwards. So from a certain angle, you can flatten the building. If I was further away, you totally understand the shape. If I was close, you would just go, oh, that's what happens. But if you walk closer and closer, you line up with how that facade goes upward. And so you have to stand in an exact spot. And here's another wonderful discovery. The only way you can flatten this damn building is if you stand in the middle of the water fountain outside of it. It's true. I'm literally going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And then I walk on the other side, I'm like, damn it, now it's flat the other one, and now it's dipping. And you just, step in, clean your shoes a bit. And there you are in the middle of a fountain, and you take a couple of photos, and the guards just look at you. They don't even care. They're like, fine. What are you going to do? Splotch around? We can catch you. We can just follow the footprints. You're fine. So this is a connection where obviously you can see my love of architecture, urbanism, travel, visual spaces, painting, poetry. And then these things happen. And it's just a wonderful discovery that is my own joy. That there it is. And I like to share that. And that to me just goes, that's a particular value, if you can put it that way, to this photograph. This is Oklahoma City. Very good thing about Oklahoma, well, very good thing about any city in the United States or anywhere in the world. If you can get a scooter, that's really good for me and my photography, to get on a scooter and just go around. And I was in Oklahoma for some work stuff, but ended up just scooting around a lot. And I saw this, and it was a wonderful discovery. I was up on a hill, northwest side of Oklahoma City, and just that's one building. The one behind has nothing to do with it, but look at all of these reflections from some other building here, and it just swoops down. This looks like the sky, but it's not the sky. And this looks like that building behind is kind of flowing over it, and you're just kind of lost in exactly what's happening. So just a very saturated, very nicely balanced. I'm sorry?
How do editors respond to that?
That one pretty well if I include it. I don't include it. This is kind of category B for how much because I can't show 50 photos. You have to be very conservative. So it's okay. I think this was in the Times just now. I think it was in them like 2 months ago. Brooklyn Bridge station, subway station, 456, the green line goes there. And so as you come up, it just has all sorts of this and then lights. I sat there for hours trying to figure out how do I make this MC Escher-ish that you just don't know what's happening. And it's so flattened with colors, and you have sharp things, and you have really this is so saturated right there. And here you can see a little bit of the lamp right there. Yeah. How are we with time? Oh man. Okay, next one is the last one, whatever it is. Oh. The Sharpest Edge is the name of this. What building is this in Dallas? You guys know what's up. So Wiley Theater, aluminum, I think facade, just really saturated. Always liked it, but I didn't know what to do with it. If there was no thing that this you see in front of you, I don't know what I would have done with this. Because much like United Nations, it looks like a broken file. What is this? What is this thing happening? Is it in front of your camera? Did you forget to take the lens cap off? Like, what's going on? And then you just have the regular sky. But this is the new hall, residences, hotel, whatever. And it's its balconies, shadow on this that just looks so sharp, cutting down that sky. And that was it. Saw it. And I wanted to do something with this. I didn't know what to do. And I saw this, and it literally looks like you came in and you cut the building in two and cut the sky. Sharpest Edge is the name of the photo. So I think I should stop here and see if there are any questions about anything that I said. So that's what I'm going to somehow.
Do you want us to leave the lights down or bring them up?
I think bring them up so maybe I can see people a little bit. You can still see this. Oh, wait, this meeting has been recorded. Got it. So you can still see something. If I wanted to show, I'm just going to go back to this. So first of all, thank you everybody for being here. So I much appreciate it. Round of applause to you. Thank you. Thank you. So, hey man, I didn't know you were here. So before any questions, I just wanted to say, Dallas Center for Photography, thank you so much. So much appreciated to be here. It's a wonderful space. I invited a lot of my dear people to see this with the hands you saw, people that were not here before. I'm glad that I had a chance to come here. So we'll talk about doing things in the future in this space. There are a lot of people here from other organizations. DCP is a nonprofit. There is the Open Classical is here, Verdigris Ensemble is here, Artstillery is here, Teatro Dallas people are here. It's just wonderful people from Dallas that have joined. So I'm glad that we're here in this space. So thank you all for being here. It's just a joy. So we have however much time we want to be here, but we have some time. Any questions about anything from the world of photography or anything else? John, I mean, whoever you are, random person. Not a paid actor for sure.
Okay, like your production is at this point, taking a lot of photos and spoken to a lot of people, right? I'm wondering, like 5, 6, 7 years in the broad sense, how do you feel like
in any specific way you notice your arts, your skill, your whatever it is that gives you the point of producing such awesome stuff.
I think that the two main things that helped are looking at my photos every day in the shower and when I drive the car around. Seriously, just
Briefly repeat the question.
the question was, how did it become that after not too many years of doing this, John's opinion is that this has a good trajectory and that it's going in a good direction. How did that come to be that it kind of solidified in a certain direction? So I suppose in some ways, if that is not the core artistic question for any creative of any kind, where do you find your balance point? Where do you find your middle in which you comfortably stand? So when things shake, you don't shake, you don't fall. It's your own middle that nobody knows where the middle is. And I think there's so many artists here that we all look for that. What is my middle? And you adjust it silently, quietly, where you are most comfortable, that life and opinions and good and bad, they just don't affect. And if you have that self-satisfying engine that it just keeps on chugging, there will be lovely things that happen that sometimes you're not even sure, where do you connect the dots? Some of these photos, I don't know how or where I'm ever going to pitch them, but I want them to live and breathe. So just, I think that's a great question of we all find our main balance point and move forward. No magical answer other than I look at my photos a lot and often move around. What's good, what's not good.
I guess this is a two-part question. The first is, are you familiar with what they call sacred, geometry, sacred?
Sacred architecture? Definitely no.
Oh, well, very briefly, it's just kind of an explanation for how everything that comes to be naturally is following some sort of informs the basic shapes that create
Yeah.
and establish
Yeah.
what are reality. So I guess I just wanted to point to how we're kind of this work is doing the opposite, but that's using natural architecture to support our
Yeah.
sense of reality.
Yeah.
And juxtaposing two concepts and I was experiencing that was something profound.
I think the main thing that is on my mind is that there is sort of I think what I like to multiply visual possibilities, like here it is, here I'm standing there. The only thing that I have, the only skill that I have, it certainly is not a great camera or a great knowledge of architecture or photography. I mean, I have what I have, but it's multiplying it with very deep thought and deeply almost hypnotic state, productive state, that I literally take photo and I'm looking at a space, and this is a real visceral reaction. I'm looking at a space through my viewfinder, and I'm standing there going, I literally don't understand what's happening. And I go like this and I go, oh. And I just go like this, and it's a very different world because I have forced you to think that this line is not normal and this one is. And that joy from familiarizing to defamiliarizing gives me goosebumps that this is possible because it shares, I am forcing myself to be, if I can use the word brave, to push as far as I can to go, we're in this together. Here's the coordinates, here's the city, here's the state. I even give you the time of the day, everything. And I go, you trust me, I trust you. Let's see what journey you have to arrive at the same weirdness of like, oh, that is weird that I don't even know. I trust that it's real. I don't know how you got to this place. And I think that's an intellectual joy, the same way that I can read Billy Collins' poetry. And it's regular words that I've heard a million times before, but he puts them in a way that I just walk away going, I don't know anything about language. Look at what the guy's doing. And that's where it just connects so many dots from me.
So, along John's line of question, obviously your skill has increased over the last 7 to 10 years and whatever you're doing this. But, you take a look at this photo here. This is one of your early photos. And some of your early photos really are extremely impactful and have been, some of your most popular ones throughout the years.
Yeah.
Was there a time near the beginning where you had an epiphany that you had something to offer in this?
Yeah.
What was your process to begin this journey?
There was a particular building, I didn't show it here, but it was on Brooklyn Bridge in New York about 10 years ago. And it was the Spruce 6 building from Frank Gehry, close to Brooklyn Bridge. Maybe it's not the name, but it's just a weird facade. And next to me were 25 people taking the same photo. I'm like, oh my God, look at this. And there was just a lot of things that were happening at that moment. But what I started thinking there is, here's just a photo of this building. What else can I do that will bring me joy, that I want to come back to this one photo, rather than the classic thing where like, I have 15,000 photos that I will never look at from that event or that thing. And so there is a joy in forcing myself to go, you have to do whatever you can mentally to where that photo is worth your time to come back to. And it grows from it's worth my time to worth a few other people their time. But then after that trip, I went back to old photos and I started recropping. And I thought, oh, here's a photo of the thing in front of the Modern Museum in Fort Worth. And I'm like, but wait, if you just go like this, it looks like an inverted exclamation point. Next one, what can I do with Thanksgiving Square? And it was just a joyful thing of like, wait a second, if I just remove this part and I give you this ambiguity, it's a wonderful thing that I'm not sure where you're going to go. And what took me this long to arrive, you might take this long, and all of these wonderful journeys that you have to make, but you trust me that you're arriving somewhere. And René Magritte does a lot of that in his paintings. We always figure out in the end what it is, but sometimes it takes a while to figure it out. So I think that was the process is best, that I started going back going, oh my God, this is so different if I just remove some things and I'm playing with essence. I mean, isn't it fascinating to go around the world like this and just go, everything is so different because I can just do this? I think so. And that just works for my psychology. Yeah.
Was that with a smartphone camera?
No, that was with when I had a DSLR, my first camera that I thought I want to learn about photography. And Charlie sold me a D200 camera for $100. And I thought I need a DSLR. And then I realized later that I don't want to do that. Yeah. Yeah.
So this whole time, it's like trying to figure out what I've seen something that reminds me of your work. Do you know who Andreas Gursky is?
Andreas Gursky? Yes.
Yeah. I was
Very.
trying to, I just like saw
He's
some pieces.
He's very, to me, he is very interesting, so influential. I'm careful with that word, but he's listed on my website under the heart link. Andreas Gursky, Michael Wolf, Andres Kertész, Luigi Ghiri, a few photographers that just, and they themselves, which is the joy of discovery. I just pretty much, if I found another photographer that was doing what I was interested in, I'm not sure I would be doing photography. It's just like, great, you exist, awesome, I'm gonna buy a book, go home. But that didn't happen. And then the photographers I connect, Andres Gursky, I have many of his books, I know his works well. And it's a big body of work and a very particular Düsseldorf School of Photography from Germany, and what happened in those years and how they formed their artists is fascinating. But yeah, I know his work. But as I connect that on to other photographers, they're not necessarily architectural photographers at all. They're just all over the place. But to me, I live humbly, respectfully in that in-between negative space of just like, oh my God, I can do this, 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 and who knows what else. But yeah, Andreas Gursky, yeah, fascinating body of work for sure. Yeah. Any other questions from anybody else? Yes.
I know now that you take showers, but I don't know if you have time to sleep.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I make the showers. I sleep in the shower, actually. That's the trick. Yeah. One eye open, look at the photos, rest the other side of the body. Yeah, no, there's time to sleep. Yeah, it's tricky sometimes, but it's okay. It's worth it. Coffee. When I go on these trips, I drink a lot of water, drink a lot of coffee, and do nothing else, and have one meal a day. That's my life of photography.
We had a question from the live stream. Someone noticed that you use the word saturation a lot, and they were curious about that, because to a lot of people, saturation means a depth of color.
Yeah.
All the pictures that you use the word saturation on didn't have that.
So thank you for teaching me that I'm using the word incorrectly. Good. No, I understand. What I mean by that is the saturated visual space, that there is no sky, there is no ground. I'm forcing just that thing. So saturated, that if I think of this, which it is really not architectural photography, I take architecture and it saturates the space. So not colors in particular. I really don't do anything with colors. If anything, I decrease the colors to just go, hey, don't worry about the colors being great. Think of the composition. So if anything, I tone back my colors. I don't oversaturate ever. So saturation, like the Fort Worth building, it's just a building. The Warp building, that's just a building. And there's a particular intoxicating thing that I liked the requirements, the restrictions, like you only work with architecture and structures in front of us, and that's it. And so sometimes it's really nice to saturate completely. And by that, I mean just architecture fills the whole space. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes. I started pitching to magazines pretty early. A magazine, the first one that I ever pitched to and worked was Dwell magazine. And I sent to them and I wrote a pitch and I made a thing on my website and I sent it in to them. And like 8 months later, they came back saying, hey, are you still interested in this? I'm like, oh God, yes, of course. And they published it. And that was just the first time to go, what's my language? How do I package my photography? How to make my website work? All sorts of things that have to happen to be able to do this. And it just grew from there. But it's just me. I don't use a PR firm. I don't work with anybody. And I just reach out. And at some point, it's sort of this, if I was published in the New York Times and I reach out to some other place, because I just want my photography to live. Like I want the Austin photos to be published in Austin, Phoenix photos to be published in Phoenix. I will reach out and just go, I was published all over the place. Let's do this. And they can take a look. And that just gives them like, well, maybe at least it doesn't look like he sucks. Let's use these. And I mean that seriously. They're like, well, I outsourced as the editor. I outsourced worrying about this. Somebody else published you. It just makes it easier for them. And I also often, and I don't want to elaborate on this unless there are specific questions, I write a lot about my own photography. I write all the things on my website and I write when I pitch. That's an extremely important thing. I mean, there's a whole body of work of writing about photography that has been, how much do you write and what do you say? That's been discussed well beyond what I have to comment on. That's a big body academically. But for me, what I think of this is as I have to be honest with myself and fine tune my own language. And I mentioned Andres Gursky and Michael Wolff and photographers to give an idea. But I also write so much when I pitch that if they want to publish me, they can pretty much take what I told them, put it in first person for them, and they're done. And I make their jobs easier. And that goes an incredible distance because they're human beings that are like, I'm an editor and I got to make 7 stories this week. And this dude pretty much wrote one for me, done. And they take it and they put it together. And that again comes back to, are my photos good or am I good at writing about them? Great, that's excellent to recognize. Ain't that life? And that happens in so many creative spaces, but definitely for me, knowing the voice that I have and being interested in 1,000 connections to this, so I can be published as travel, as architecture. I was published in poetry magazines with poems that go with my photographs. It is wonderful to see this, and I'm very joyful that this is the case. But maybe the short answer is the ability to write is really useful. I'm not particularly, I don't know if I'm good or not, but there it is. It works. Yeah.
Nikola, one more quick question. Somebody online asked, did you ever shoot interiors?
Interiors? No, I mean, there were some commissions where I was asked to shoot, and that's just, it doesn't, I mean, if it interests me personally that I would like to go and do it, like I would like to shoot the Dallas Symphony, Meyerson building and something like that. Yeah. So in general, no, no, but some buildings I would be interested to do, but mostly I like light and I like to be left alone so I can just walk unimpeded. Yeah. Yes.
Comment, writing and art, I think the writing is to unlock.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you can approach writing with an art form along with the photography. And I don't think I'm doing that, sure. What writing does unlock, not that carries the value there. It's like a scientific paper, there were research and explanation.
Yeah, like a synopsis of your work, of course. I think philosophically for me, being able to write concretely is to understand yourself. And from that, you're able to talk about photography. I can talk very comfortably about photography because I'm very aware of my truths. And no matter what angle I discuss it, I would know what my truth is, or I would ask a question and then go and think about it. So being able to write to me, I think reflects the truth that I have for myself, that I can communicate this. And I think that expands definitely to other types of photography.
Your presentation, I love your presentation. Other quality, the discount.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
It's a good thing.
yeah, it's definitely enjoyable. Any other questions from anybody?
I think Nikola will stay around for.
Sure, I'm staying around to just drink some water. Yeah. Yeah. So once again, thank you, everybody. Thank you, DCP. Thank you, everybody that came out. So much fun. Thank you. Thank you. Oh.